So much for having me. I am David Harris, and I am a reflexive sociologist. I'm guessing most of you don't know what that means, but I want to offer you an invitation to reflexive sociology. And this is the cover of a book by Pierre Bourdieu and Loïc Wacquant that introduces this idea. We reflexive sociologists study all aspects of human life, human behavior, but we also believe that introspection and studying ourselves, our own biases, and really why we are who we are and why we think what we think is critical to the endeavor of sociological scholarship. As such, I want to walk you through a brief architectural history of the institutions that I believe have shaped me. This is my point of origin, which I imagine I may share with many of you here in the audience. Raise your hand if you were born in this building, Stanford Hospital. We have a few of us, yes. I then studied at this institution, Mountain View High School. I graduated in 1999, the same year that Google moved into Mountain View. The town wasn't big enough for the two of us, so I headed off far, far away to this place, a truly foreign land, culturally speaking, less than an hour's drive, UC Berkeley. One joke I often tell my students, well, I went to study at UC Berkeley, now I teach there. What do Silicon Valley and Berkeley have in common? Nobody trusts you if you're wearing a tie. But for different reasons. In Berkeley, it was the activist zeal and the spirit that you should be the change that you want to see in the world that got me so excited about being in that place. But I think that I interpreted that activism and that spirit with the technological lens, the geekiness, the gadget obsession, and the spirit of Silicon Valley innovation, which teaches you that if you see a problem in the world, you should solve it. Perhaps using technology, perhaps a combination of technology and other forces. I got very excited about activism as an undergraduate, and I got an internship at this place, the White House. I worked in particular in the White House Council on Environmental Quality at the very last stages of the Clinton administration. That was a moment and an experience that changed my life, and it sent me running back to California as quickly as possible, and then running even further away to this place. This you probably don't recognize. This is the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. This is where I got my master's degree in sociology, and I went there to study inequality. Inequality was something that I became very, very interested in. In particular, I looked at the relationships between domestic workers, maids, nannies, and their employers in both Brazil and the United States, because I really wanted to understand the cultures of inequality, the cultures that perpetuate inequality, the stories that we tell ourselves to justify, or not justify, or to fight against inequality. That was a big part of my studies. And then I got an email in my last few months that I was in Sao Paulo that brought me back to Palo Alto, back to Silicon Valley, to this place, which is called the Institute for the Future. This was at an event, actually, where I recently saw Christine, who was one of the organizers of this event. This was the Apocalypse Project fashion show. This was a fashion show that we hosted at the Future Gallery to talk about climate change through the lens of fashion. This was a very exciting event. I was the curator of this show, and it was an opportunity for me to use art and environmental science and thinking about the future as a lens, as a way of inviting people to think differently and to think deeply about the future. Somehow then I ended up back at Berkeley. I was invited to teach 2 years ago at Berkeley as a result and part of the work I was doing at the Institute for the Future. I don't have an MBA like some of our other speakers earlier today, but I actually teach MBA students a class called Scenario Planning and Futures Thinking, and I teach a couple of other classes to undergrads. One is called Social Movements and Social Media, and another class that I gave a name to more than a year ago is called Civic Technology and the Social Media President. I named that class before our tweeter-in-chief was elected. And it was an exciting semester to really explore what it meant to be a leader in the age of technology and social media. I come here today wearing 3 different hats. First and foremost, what you'll hear about from me the rest of this talk is about the Global Lives Project, an organization that I started 13 years ago. I'll get a little deeper into that soon. Also, as I mentioned, I'm the Chancellor's Public Scholar at UC Berkeley and Research Director at the Institute for the Future, where I'm actually on paternity leave. And I'm taking care of my 8-month-old twins right now as well. So I want to show you a trailer from my latest piece with the Global Lives Project. This is actually a trailer of Lives in Transit, which is a series that just opened a few months ago as a month-long exhibit at Lincoln Center in New York as part of the New York Film Festival. Me, is Global Lives art, or is it sociology? Is it a technology startup? Is it a media endeavor? Is this a nonprofit organization? And the answer is yes to all of those things. And I've gone about Global Lives over these last 13 years with all of those different hats on and trying to actually think as I work through this effort from all of those different perspectives about what I'm trying to do. Now, Global Lives is asking some very big questions. One of those questions is, what could global empathy look like? Another big question that we ask, very much related, is, what are the boundaries of your moral universe? Now, I'd like to ask a question. This is a serious question. Between 2003 and 2011, the United States was at war in Iraq. How many Iraqis died during this war? I'm wondering if anyone would just shout out a number.
123,000.
123,000. Anyone else?
5 million.
5 million. 1 million. How many? 500,000. Any other numbers? So I want to call to your attention that those estimates from this audience, this is probably a very educated audience in this room, much higher than average in this country, I'm sure. Those estimates varied by orders of magnitude. We had estimates ranging from 123,000 to 5 million. The estimates, some of the most reliable estimates right now are around 500,000. This, I think, is a tragedy that we are living right now. That most of us in this room lived through a period where our tax dollars were funding a war that we don't know by orders of magnitude how many people died because of and during that conflict. And I think this points to a broader crisis, and I think it's a moral crisis in our nation and perhaps in other nations, that we don't value human lives equally. We don't value human lives equally across cultural boundaries, across religious boundaries, across boundaries of nationality, across boundaries of class and of gender as well. And that's what I set out to change through Global Lives. The motto of Global Lives is step out of your world. When I set out on this journey of Global Lives initially, I started with the idea of recording the lives of 10 people from 10 different countries. And I'm going to show you a short video clip where some of my collaborators explain how we picked those first 10 people.
The Global Lives Project set out to document 24 hours in the daily life of 10 people who roughly represent the diversity of humanity.
From the most intimate to the most mundane moments, our crews patiently watched, turning themselves over to the pace and rhythms of lives not their own.
Geography. 61% of the world's population lives in Asia, so we selected 6 Asians and 1 person each from the other 4 major world regions: North America, South America, Africa, and Europe.
We also learned that more than half of the world lives in cities, so we chose 5 urban and 5 rural people.
Income. We conducted detailed economic research to select 10 people whose earnings roughly represent global income distribution.
Gender. Half men, half women.
Religion. The actual religious distribution of the planet.
Age. The actual age distribution of the planet. 6 of the 10 people are under 30 years old.
Score and the representativity score, which is relative to the overall collection of videos that we produced for Global Lives to select those first 10 people. And we adapted this process to select the 10 additional people, the transportation workers, who became the subjects of the Lives in Transit series. Over the last 13 years that I've been working on Global Lives, we've done dozens and dozens of exhibits around the world. We've produced more than 20 films, each 24 hours long, in the lives of people from 17 different countries around the world. And when I brought this work to this building, another influential building in my life, the Smithsonian, I was asked by a couple of anthropologists who got very excited about Global Lives if I could explain to them the details of my methodology. And I was very excited that they thought I had a methodology. I thought of it at that time as just art and film. This is actually a document that I shared with them. This is our production guide. This is how film crews around the world go through this process of producing a 24-hour-long video of a day in the life of a person, and also collecting their life story as an interview, which also becomes part of the Global Lives video library of life experience. This guide walks you through the whole process: pre-production, the day of production, and post-production. This is an example of an equipment checklist that you'd use to figure out what you need to produce this shoot. We show Global Lives videos in a few different formats. We started out by showing them in video installations. I'll show you some images of those. We also have a website where you can actually explore the entire video library, and we'll be launching the Lives in Transit series, 240 new hours of video of daily life, over the course of this year and next year. This is one way you can explore, and this is another through a map where you can see the relationships between the different people from different countries that we produce. This is one of the exhibits that I mentioned to you. This happens to be an exhibit that took place close to here at Google's headquarters in in Mountain View. This was an exhibit at Google's office in New York, and this was the premiere of the Lives in Transit series at Lincoln Center. We also do these exhibits in schools. This is an exhibit at Envision Academy, a charter school in Oakland, California. This is another exhibit image from Envision Academy. But the idea to actually bring Global Lives into schools was not my own. I can't take credit for that. It came from a lot of different teachers who were effectively banging down the door telling me to come talk to their students about what I was doing with Global Lives. And the most influential of those groups was from actually the Indonesian National Teachers Association. They, along with my producer, who I collaborated with in Indonesia, had a meeting and then sent me a 2-page document outlining all of the different subjects, grade levels, and lessons that could be used with Global Lives to bring Global Lives into classrooms around the world. I then took Global Lives to middle school, globallives.org, and I'll get you all the details on being there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you.